Hi! And welcome back to Flowers! But it's summertime now. Last time, boy, there's just a whole lot of personal drama, whole lot of personal tension going on, and bunnies! We got a bunny problem, and it sounds like it's not going really good, and I think that bunny problem definitely going to create more tension as Erika and her amitié partner both find themselves maybe kind of on the hook for this one. So it's time for the investigation team to journey forth and uncover the mystery of our cute little bun friends. I know I'm flying too close to the sun here and may get burnt. It's a silly hope of mine. I'm sure it's doomed to fall flat. Well, perhaps not silly, but this is really not what I wanted to be doing this summer. I muttered to myself as I gazed out through the open window at the blue moon. I declared in front of my classmates that I would handle the incident of the missing baby rabbits. To be honest, I'm not sure myself that it'll be possible to find them still. But the president, in fact, all of my classmates, won't easily forgive me if I come back empty-handed. What does a suitable compromise entail here? If someone is connected to the baby rabbit's disappearance, then I have to finger them as the culprit. If it was just an accident, then simply explaining the cause or what led to it would be an obvious compromise to reach for. But either way, identifying what happened is going to be quite a hassle. So this needs to be like an accident, but also it needs to not be our fault. If there's anyone who's got the kind of mind that I think that could put something like this together, we are currently inhabiting that little head. That gloomy expression of hers when I'd caught the shadow of despair in that look, I'd run my mouth off and said I'd settle things. What must have come over me in that moment? My doubts disperse at the sound of a knock at the door. Hey! How's it going? We always love us a nice visit from Sister Dahlia. Sister Basquiat enters the room wearing her usual gentle expression. It soothes me in a moment of mild irritation to see her unchanged demeanor. Sister Basquiat tilts her head to one side as though dismayed at my answer. It's a puzzling thing for her to come out with, and as though I really am Shirahane, I instantly think of the line from a movie. It's Austin! Erika, you fucking dork. Okay. Nothing at all, ma'am. Nothing at all, baby. Yeah! I feel beaten down by the sheer vexatiousness of everything, but I swallow my words and briefly shake my head. Oh, she's got faith in us. Sister Basquiat suddenly says, my eyes meet Sister Basquiat's, and then, as she carefully washes my legs, they trawl down to her voluptuous chest. The two mounds sway beneath her bath towel as she strokes up and down. Like a cat, I follow their motion with my eyes. Although I'm used to this degree of care by now, recently there have been moments when I've become strangely hyper-aware of it. I mean, that's probably a part of it, but also, your gay is blooming. I glance down at my own meager chest and sigh. I mutter in response. It doesn't seem like she intends to scold me. Aww. You're a good girl, Erika. Like putty in her hands. Nah, you can't say it. Nah, again. Target sighted and done. She gazes at me with a bright, amiable smile. I really don't have the heart to be mean to her. Their personalities are poles apart, but the way they have of talking you into things or overriding what you say is kind of the same. I heave my umpteenth sigh of the day. The topic hadn't arisen after we'd returned to our room, not during dinner. She probably wants to know why. She looks restlessly into my eyes. Seeing the unease clouding those golden eyes of hers, I choose the words I'm sure she wants to hear. Her beautiful brows furrow as she thinks of the deep forest encircling the academy. I greet this maternal concern of hers with a wry smile. There you go! I can't help myself. She blinks at me and I'm about to tell her that I'm just joking when she claps her hands together, her cheeks flush. Aww. We got a dutiful assistant. Look at us go. She's beaming at me like a little girl. Oh, you are so adorable. I have no choice but to answer like that. She's got your number. You never win. You are never winning! All right, we get to go on a detective adventure with Sister Dahlia. Let's go! The early summer breeze ruffles the flowers and the smiling Sister Basquiat's bangs. No, I knew from the get-go that she wasn't the kind of person to make jokes. It's been like pulling teeth, but I've been gathering bits of information here and there between classes. And then Sister Basquiat had come up to me with a broad smile on her face just as I was about to leave the classroom after the last lesson of the day and launch into my full-scale investigation. Only a moment ago, she'd been talking like she had a destination in mind. I sigh surreptitiously. Our interviewee starts speaking, a little hesitantly. It's okay, Ichigo, you're not on trial here. The elder Sasaki sister looks nervously at me. No, it's Sister Basquiat who's smiling beside me.
あの時はただいないって騒いだだけだからな。細かく教えてくれ。わかったよ。一つ質問していい？ダメだ。
No! You are not asking the questions here!
私もなんでこうなっているか説明しにくい。お互いさっさと済ませようぜ。
Looking at the smiling Sister Basquiat, she seems to have gotten the hint. Sasaki beckons to her sister, who's been hanging back and watching, and whispers something to her. Is she Ichigo's lawyer? In case this goes sideways, I need my lawyer. Ringo would probably be a good lawyer, though.
昨日の朝、いちご姉はウサギのお世話に行くことができたのですが、私はできませんでしたので、お昼はいちご姉よりも早く食事をし終え、お世話をしに向かったのです。
You mean go play with them? I'm tempted to interject, but faced with the seriousness of Sister Basquiat and the elder Sasaki sister, I listen quietly and urge her on.
急いで昼食をとってから向かったので、飼育小屋には私以外まだ誰もいませんでした。
あら？その言い方だと他の生徒もよく来ているように聞こえるわ。
その捉え方で合っていますよ。佐々木姉妹だけじゃなく、クラスメイトたちが様子を見にちょくちょく来ていましたからね。
そうなの。
Sister Basquiat tilts her head slightly. Probably curious about her demeanor, the younger Sasaki sister butts in.
何か気になるんですか？
以前、飼育小屋のあたりを巡回していても、クラスの皆さんはあまり見かけたことがなかったので。
それは今まで2年生が担当だったからですよ。うさぎさんがいることは知っていたんですけど、2年生の人たちが世話をしていると聞いて、言い方は悪いですけど、萎縮していたんです。知っている部の先輩ならいいですけど、違う場合は怒られるかもって、それで。
She meets my eyes.
罰則で八重垣ちゃんたちが担当になったので、敷居が低くなったと言いますか。
Makes sense. So an unknown upperclassman presents a greater hurdle than an eccentric like me. Sister Basquiat's head is still tilted to one side in curiosity. Perhaps she doesn't understand the sentiment.
脱線したな。続けてくれ。はい。うさぎさんたちの食事がまだだったので、飼育小屋の隣にある干し草を抱えて中へ入ってうさぎさんたちの相手をしていると、私が来たってわけ。そこで世話をしていたら、あれって。
Totally not in there to play. Totally didn't go in to play with bunnies.
頭数が少ないってことに気づいたのか。4羽いるはずなのに2羽しかいなくて、だから探していたんだけど、見つからないので、これはおかしいと。で、教室に駆け込んできたってわけか。
They both nod. I look across to Sister Basquiat, whose brow is intensely furrowed.
あ、いえ。ただ、生まれた子ウサギが4羽だったんだなって。
She asked me to take on the job without knowing any of the details? Although I can't help but think, I figured that's something like, there's not a lot of adult responsibility around Saint Angraecum. I feel like these kids are largely left to their own devices to do basically whatever they want. Despite it being a boarding school, and I feel like those may be being a little stricter than normal schools, I feel like the adults around here are... I don't know what these adults are doing all day unless they... Like, we know of two. And I don't know what they're doing all day, but they're not doing a whole lot of keeping track of anything. To be honest, if I hadn't been involved in that myself, I'd probably I'd probably have heard the same baby rabbits had been born, that some baby rabbits had been born, but I doubt I'd have found out how many unless I'd stuck my nose in any further. She asks me. She's at a total loss for words. You've been found out, Missy! Knowing the Sasaki sisters, they were sure to be sticking their noses into the matter. It had been a trick question, and it appears to have succeeded in drawing the truth from them. I stare hard into her eyes. Sister Basquiat also bows her head. Yeah, you're done. You're cooked. You're cooked! Spill! Usually, if she had any information of her own, she'd share it boastfully. So the fact that she can't talk about it means... Oh, okay, we're gonna make the heat go away a little bit. Wink, wink! You are the best detective's assistant. She smiles brightly. In contrast, the Sasaki sisters' expressions are tense. This isn't what I signed up for, I think to myself. Alright, what'd we drag out of them? With a sideways glance at the strangely excited Sister Basquiat, I survey the rabbit pen. That would certainly make this a lot less of a mystery. With Sister Basquiat pushing me around, I used the magnifying glass from the bag she brought me to examine the enclosure carefully. From the twins' reluctance to talk, I'd figured that it was either out of consideration for a friend, or that it was something they found difficult to say in front of either me or Sister Basquiat. Looks like I was right. Yeah, I was kind of thinking they think, like, maybe she would, like, I don't know, why would she take them? When I'd noticed their expressions stiffen at the sight of her, I'd wondered if perhaps there was something they couldn't say in front of her, but I'd never have imagined that they considered her a suspect in the baby bunny's disappearance. I mean, bunnies are cute, but I never really pegged Dahlia as a bunny napper. I would hope that's not the I would hope that's not the solution here. That would be dreadful. Really? Of course they didn't. Even if they did come across the person hiding them, no one would be idiotic enough to admit to being the culprit just like that.
絶対に部屋に入れてくれない生徒っているって。
It seems like the younger one's got some smarts. Yeah, I've always said that Ringo's probably the smartest of the two here. She's definitely got a leg up in terms of, like, thinking outside the box or looking at things from a different point of view. She may be eternally eepy, but she's definitely got some smarts in that noggin.
それで話を聞いていくうちに生徒じゃなくバスキア教諭が絶対に部屋を見せないって噂に聞き
Okay, that makes sense. Okay, I can see where you're going with your line of reasoning now. I think, like, most adults typically never want children in their rooms for various reasons, you know, privacy and whatnot. I don't think that, you know, Dahlia is doing anything untoward, or if, you know, she's got things in there she doesn't want anybody to see. Everybody's entitled to their privacy. Nobody owes you a look of their room.
そう、ダリア先生なら部屋に招いて競技の話だとかしそうなのにおかしくない？ま、確かにやりそうな感じはするわな。
It's such a believable scenario, I immediately start picturing it myself. The younger Sasaki twin looks around before bringing her lips close to my ear.
それと噂ですけどね。
What?
ダリア先生の部屋の前で羊の鳴き声を聞いた生徒がいるらしいのですよ。
That's an awkward thing. Okay. Sister Dahlia, you've got bleating coming from your room? That's a little curious. That's definitely worth at least questioning.
つまりウサギと言わずバスキア教諭は動物好きで部屋に引っ張り込んでるって話。
Yeah, sure, why not?
信じるか信じないかは八重垣ちゃん次第ですよ。
Are you two just being little shits again? Is that what's going on here? Are we having another little shit situation in the middle of a perfectly serious investigation?
妙なセリフで締めるのは
Hey everybody, Sister Dahlia's got a fucking zoo in her
他の生
room!
徒たちに広めてないよな。嫌ですね。そうだよ。信用してよ、八重垣ちゃん。
I can assure you there is nobody I trust more. I can't help but sigh at how absurdly misguided the path they've headed down is.
破損した箇所はないようですね。
Woof. Almost knocked over a glass of water. That would have been a tragedy. Sister Basquiat speaks right into my ear, and I put the conversation at the cooking club to one side, nodding my agreement with her.
穴が開いてたり、破損している箇所はなさそうだ。
She nods, and I suddenly have the urge to interrogate her. However,
あなたが犯人ですかなんて高崎みたいな真似はできないしな。
and personally, I imagine that even if she did take them home with her out of a love for animals, she'd probably come clean to everyone straight away and apologize, judging by her personality. No.
もしかして言えない理由で。
何の理由ですか？
Sister Basquiat overhears my murmurings, and I gloss over it with a vague smile. It's a bit late for it now, but I sympathize with Shirahane, who's already solved several mysteries like this. She did a good job to investigate all of them without once giving up.
何かわかりましたか？
先ほどの佐々木姉妹の証言から私たちが世話をした朝7時半から昼食を終えた佐々木妹が訪れた12時半頃までこの間に子ウサギが消えたということになりますが
That is a long stretch of time. That's... Whew. That could, that opens a lot of possibilities.
ほぼ午前中の間の時間すべてですか？
Implicit in her troubled look is a concern that it'll be difficult to narrow down the culprit based on that time frame.
そうです。学者からこの の飼育小屋に向かうなら中庭を通らなければいけませんよね。
そうですが、何か？
昨日は庭師の方が中庭の剪定をなさっていたのです。一日中作業していたそうですから。
Mm-hmm.
午前中誰が通ったか聞けば絞れる。
She nods, clasping her hands together in joy. It's certainly an effective screening method. You're always helpful, Sister Dahlia. She takes a hold of my hand, her cheeks flushed. She murmurs her contentment. As she leans in close, her rich, womanly scent wafts over me. I'm conscious of her in a way that I might be of someone the opposite sex. I start to sweat. It's happening. It's happening, Erika. Don't resist. Just let it happen. The gay is going to overtake you. Yeah, that's how you know that it's really kicked in. Because now it's just like, y'all are just, in your normal day-to-days. And now it's suddenly, oh, damn. I'm even more hyper-aware of it now. As she crouches down so as to be at eye level with me, her knees lift her full breasts. I don't quite know where to look. I'm not Shirahane. I think of Shirahane, who'd been dating Mayuri Kosaka, the girl who disappeared in the spring. A vision of her face pops into my head and my flushed body calms. Then, I suddenly hear a cute little sneeze and find myself staring right into Sister Basquiat's face. I can't help but reflect on how cute Sister Basquiat looks with her bright red face. And then I'm embarrassed at myself for thinking it. Nah, it's okay. You are just experiencing things for the first time. Embrace it. It's a wild ride, one that you won't soon regret. Then, I hear the sneeze again. We both look at one another. Well, I mean, again, hay fever's not contagious, so was Ichigo actually sick? And she actually gave the rabbit a sickie? Since each of us is looking the other in the eye, who might have sneezed? It might be, you never know. After staring in the direction the sneeze had come from for a moment, I spot one of the rabbits snuffling. She covers her mouth with her hand as she continues to giggle uncontrollably. I suppose it's the first time I've heard a rabbit sneeze myself. Gazing at the snuffling rabbit, I feel something tugging at the corner of my mind. Something important. She smiles and clasps her hands together, overjoyed to recall my praise of her idea. Again, the vibe she's given off reminds me of my second oldest sister. Usually, it would bring to mind thoughts of home, which I don't particularly miss. However, got the feeling you're about to find a compromise. I'll verify that the answer which has been nagging at me, the solution I've cobbled together, is correct. The culprit that the president told me to find. If my guess is right, it's a decent solution which could also serve as a form of payback. So it's not going to necessarily be the truth, but a compromise that will be like, all right, we got an answer that will satisfy all criteria of having solved the case and also getting heat taken off of Takasaki. but it might have unintended consequences.
それでは行きましょうか。
As Sister Basquiat pushes my wheelchair along, I look up at the high columns of cloud, gravid, and rain. Now, I wonder how I should broach it with them. The day after I've deduced who the culprit is, I'm pushing my wheelchair along while enduring the grumblings of my empty stomach. It's the hungriest time of the day, the period just before lunch. Next, we have Bible study.
ちょうどいい時間がこの時間だったからしょうがないけどな。
I murmur to myself, making my way to the chapel. Still, it's annoying when I have a hard task ahead of me to have to face it on an empty stomach. I pass through the entrance hall and exit the school building. The midday sun is shining down hard and bright on the surrounding greenery. As I'm gazing at the school building, also glittering in the light, a thought suddenly occurs to me. That time that Yuzuriha got murdered.
思い出すな。
Although it seems like such a long time ago, it hasn't even been a month since the murder happened. With a deep sigh, I reflect on how similar the situation I'm now in is to that earlier occurrence. I recall my bookworm buddy stepping up in front of everyone despite her shyness in order to clear her friend's name. I smile that feline smile of mine again.
さて、本番に入る前に一つリハーサル。
All right, let's do it. Let's big brain it. Here we go. My favorite part. First things first, how did the incident begin? I can't reveal the solution to the case before my classmates without defining the primary problem. Rather than looking for the truth, I'm focused on resolving this issue. But that makes it all the more necessary to ascertain what really happened. Was the disappearance of the rabbits an accident, or was it intentional? It was an accident. I don't think that anybody did this intentionally. Natural causes like a wild animal it doesn't work either because you've not been shown anything that would point to that, so it's clearly an accident. Right. In looking for some resolution to this case, an element of human error has to be assumed, or rather, someone made a mistake by unknowingly giving a false report of the rabbit's disappearance. I have to call that person out and settle this once and for all. Who falsely reported the rabbit's disappearance? Well, that would be Chidori herself. Going over the notes in my head, I think I need one more key detail to convince the others. The pain has to be doled out evenly. I'll have to dilute this deadly poison until it's a mild irritant that will at least upset their stomachs. Which of these is connected to the disappearance of the rabbits? Sister Basquiat, the upperclassman who took them previously. None of those at all, actually.
ま、こんなところか。
Once I finished putting it all together in my head, I sent a glare up at the midday sun, then set off for the chapel. The final note of Takasaki's rendition of Ave Maria lingers in the air.
ありがとうございます、高崎さん。
Sister Basquiat says this just as she did before.
日の繰り返しみたいだ。
The day we were made to look after the rabbits, when Takasaki overheard mention of Mayuri Kosaka and kept on prying about her until things turned ugly. The differences being the strength of the applause and the way the looks directed her way have changed from ones of admiration to clear hostility. After her performance, Takasaki steps down from the chancel and returns to us. Looking up at Sister Basquiat, the latter starts lecturing. It's that same haughty gaze.
さっさと打ち明けていたら。
I smile wryly, aware that I am taking her to task in my mind.
何を笑っているの？笑っていない。笑っているんだ。
Big difference. She frowns in incomprehension. Of course, it's a matter of nuance she's not going to understand.
では何か質問のある人はいませんか？
A few students raise their hands, as do I.
あら、嬉しいですね。それでは八重垣さん。
She's the epitome of virtue. I speak out in a clear voice, my hand still raised.
子ウサギが消えた件が解決しましたので、ここで述べさせてもらってもいいですか？
Good time to bring that up. After my declaration, there's a brief silence. Then, Sister Basquiat's voice rings out in the chapel, more excited than usual.
静まりなさい。神の御前ですよ。
Damn, she has a much more stern tone than I expected. The whispers had been faint, but they're quelled completely by Sister Basquiat's decisive command.
子ウサギが見つかったの？
The president presses me. The reason she's so excited?
知らね。
She probably imagines that her amitié partner will find some relief in my report. Although the president shuts her mouth at Sister Basquiat's rebuke, her eyes remain on me imploringly.
この場を借りて、事の次第を話してもよろしいでしょうか、シスター。
A rare frown mars her face and she glances up at the figure of Christ on the cross.
わかりました。了承します。
I like this profile shot of her. It's very, again, it really gets across serious mode. Dahlia, I like it a lot. She nods. I wheel my chair into the space between where my classmates are seated and where Sister Basquiat's standing on the stage. I gaze out at the Sasaki twins, my bookworm buddy, Rika Hanabishi, Chidori Takasaki, and the new transfer students. And all of their classmates who are looking at me half with animosity and half with curiosity, like I'm some interesting plaything.
そもそもこの事件に明確な犯人はいないんだ。
That's where I begin.
それってどういうこと？もしかして野犬に襲われちゃったってこと？
Although Sasaki's suggestion causes a wave of muttering, it dies away when I spread my arms in a gesture of rebuttal.
飼育小屋で真相を明かすと約束してから、佐々木の言うように野犬の仕業かもと飼育小屋の周りを調べて回ったり、生徒ら、そしてこの学院に従事している者たちからいろいろと話を聞いて回ったよ。何か分かったのね。
Ignoring the president's interjections, I tell them that we'll first look back on the events of the day the incident occurred. I relay the time frame I'd heard from the Sasaki sisters. My strange story, hardly fit for a church, echoes through the otherwise silent chapel.
おおよその流れは分かったわ。朝世話をした八重垣さんたち、そして昼食後に様子を見に行った佐々木さんたち。つまり八重垣さんたちが世話をし終わった7時半過ぎから佐々木さんたちが行くまでの12時半までに子ウサギが消えたということね。
I give her a slight clap as a sign of my gratitude for summing it all up. Her eyes narrow slightly, perhaps in suspicion that I'm mocking her.
それってあの日午前中の間に飼育小屋に行った人が犯人だということ？
Everyone in the class uses their break time to go and play with the rabbits. It's only natural that they turn their suspicion on one another. However,
誰が言ったのかもう少し絞れそうなんだ。どういうこと？調べて回った結果分かったんだけどさ、ウサギが消えた日、学舎前の庭園で剪定、庭師をしていた人がいたんだよ。あ、そういえば確かに作業してたね。
my classmates nod excitedly. During lunch break, everyone tumbles out of the school building and crosses the gardens on their way to the rabbit pen. They'd probably have seen the gardener then.
つまりその 庭師の人に聞けば誰が通ったかわかるし、犯人が
Process of elimination, and then just, you know, narrowing down a much more exact time frame.
すごいじゃない。これで一気に解決ね。
The president makes clear her excitement as another wave of murmuring rises. But looking at the glum expression on Shirahane's face, I shake my head slightly.
確かにあの日、世話をしていたものから絞り込めるかもしれない。話通りならね。だがそいつは佐々木が話してくれた話が本当だという大前提のものだ。嘘をついていないというお約束のもとでの話なんだよ。
八重垣ちゃん、私たちは嘘をついてなんかいないですよ。
Ignoring the twins' clamoring, I declare that the reason the baby rabbits disappeared is so simple as to be mundane.
単純ですか？
Sister Basquiat, who hadn't joined in the conversation until now, asks me this as she soothes the Sasakis.
はい。これは故意的な事件ではなく、野犬が起こした事件でもない。人が悪意なく起こした事故だったんですよ。
事故なのですか？
ええ。ここにいるクラスメイトの大体のものが飼育小屋へ世話をしに来てくれた。だよな。
I look over at the sea of faces, taking in a variety of expressions, from meek to suspicious, from those staring down at their feet to those glaring at me like I've upset them.
重度の人見知りの白羽はよく耐えたもんだ。
As I reflect on how often I end up in the minority, Shirahane pops into my head and I can't help but smile.
八重垣さん。
Fiddling with her braids, the president urges me on impatiently.
世話と言っても、大体のことは高崎と私で行っていたので、みんなは餌を、干し草を飼育小屋の中へと持って行ってあげる。
We're all the murderer!
それで間違いないよな。
My classmates nod their heads.
で、干し草を持って行ったみんなは、全員が全員、私が知っているだけでも、こうごっそりと持ち運ぶ。
We all did it! In the bundles of hay! That's a real good one!
全員は全員だよ。別におかしいことはない。みんなは2年生が世話をしていた時は来なかった。私たちが世話をしてから来だしただろ。その時、高崎が干し草をやっているのを見て、みんな、ああ、そういうものかって真似したのさ。
I demonstrate with a gesture, and my classmates nod. There are some of them who aren't nodding, but they've probably cottoned on to what I've left unsaid so far. There's more sirens. Every time I play this game, there's sirens! They know we're committing gay crimes! How has it been sirens 3 days in a row? God, what is going on in this town? I look slowly over the assembled faces once more.
そして干し草をやる際に、子ウサギが紛れた。
Time briefly stands still. Everyone is dumbfounded, and then, after they've gotten over their moment of hesitation,
なんで、それっておかしくない？
they argue back, even though they know full well that it does.
です。紛れるなんてこと。だって飼育小屋の隣に置いてある干し草をあげて、どうして？
言ったろ。単純なことなんだよ。高崎の餌のやり方を見てみんな真似をした。でもな、干し草が湿ると食いつきが悪くなるって言うんで、食べ残った干し草はまた飼育小屋の隣へと日干しさせてたんだよ。つまり
何度も干し草を飼育小屋へ、余ったらその都度外に出して
Yep, that's real good!
繰り返していたことで子ウサギが紛れてしまったってこと？
The bunnies would constantly get swapped in and out without realizing it, and because they're so small, they're easy to lose in it. They'd be easy to lose in a big bundle of hay.
湿った干し草を乾かすんだから、ごそっと奥からかき出して。 飼育小屋の隣へと干し草を移動した。
Realizing that the rabbits are gone because of their own negligence, everyone falls silent, their faces deathly pale.
もともと飼育小屋から干し草を持ち出し乾かしたのは高崎だから。
If I were to try and pin blame, the fault is partially Takasaki's, but I can't bring myself to denounce her, knowing that I'm also involved.
人が起こした事故。でも干し草を入れて出してを繰り返して起きた事故なら誰が起こしたかわかると思うわ。
子ウサギが消えた日の朝から午前中に飼育小屋へ行った生徒を割り出せばいいってことだろ。庭師の証言も得られそうだしな。
そうよね。
Her elation quickly tapers off. Because long story short, she's realized that her suggestion amounts to pointing out exactly who among us is responsible for this incident. She looks awkwardly up at Sister Basquiat, standing there calm and composed. The latter regards me with her topaz eyes. Forcing a smile, I try to ease the tension.
ま、そこで佐々木が話したことが大前提になっている。朝から午前中での事故が間違いだって話をしたのさ。
だってここは空気を読むところかもしれないですけど、やっぱり嘘は言ってないですよ。
I nod. The twins are looking at me in innocent confusion, having received a rather different response to the one they'd been expecting. Then, with a thrust of my chin, I indicate my amitié partner. Despite being named as a prime suspect, she's acting like this has nothing to do with her.
嘘をついていたのはこいつ高崎千鳥だからな。
それってもしかしてさっきの話なら世話をするのが面倒でわざと干し草に紛れさせて。
I think that's a little more radical of a conclusion than we were going for here. Takasaki is staring hard to a point off to the side of me, neither confirming nor denying it. Hearing the hubbub start to grow, I remind everyone that I'd already said it was an accident.
こいつ高崎は嘘をついてたって自覚がなかったんだよ。そう思い込んでいただけなんだ。
And this is where we get to softening the blow.
ごめんなさい。私たちに分かるように言ってくださる？
嘘をついていたってのは大前提となった時間、朝7時半から正午12時半の間っていう消えてしまった時間だ。実際はウサギが消えたのは朝から正午ではなくずっと前に消えてしまっていたのさ。
Everyone, including the president and the Sasaki twins, turn their looks toward Takasaki, whose eyes have made the same haughty look as ever.
それはその朝子ウサギがいたって証言が嘘で、もうその時にはいなかったってことだよね。
そうだ。
いたわ。
Takasaki glares at me and I let out a small sigh.
違うね。いたように見えた。
What you getting at here?
正解だろ。
What you going for? Facing Sister Basquiat up on stage, I announced to no one in particular what I myself only recently realized.
こいつは高崎千鳥はかなり目が悪いんだよ。
Perhaps she'd been expecting some grave confession because the president suddenly seems to deflate.
みんなもこいつずいぶん目つきが悪いやつだなって思ったことなかったか？なんていうか睨むのが基本みたいなやつだって。
それはまあ。
At the president's words, everyone starts looking at one another and nodding as though they had been thinking the same thing all along. That constant haughty gaze.
私もそう思ったよ。とっつきにくいやつだなってさ。高崎、こいつが何本に見える？
I hold up my hand and raise some of my fingers. Takasaki glares, no squints at them.
4本。
she says to the 3 fingers I'm holding up.
ま、こういうことだ。乱視だか遠視だか知らないけどな。こいつの言う板が信用できないのは分かっただろ?
I hadn't really considered that. But again, they keep kind of mentioning the way that she kind of looks at people is maybe weird. Feeling her haughty eyes on me? No, that's not fair right now. They indicate only a desire for the truth. I wheel away from the platform and back toward everyone.
目を細めていた？それじゃ思い違いをしていたってこと？
本人は嘘をついていたとは思っちゃいない。こいつは本当にそう思っていたんだ。
After my little monologue, a long silence descends on the chapel. After a while,
確かにいたという発言が覆るのだとしたら、
もう誰が直接の犯人だとかは調べられないってことさ。
それは
その方がいいだろう。わかるよな、委員長。
it's better. Like, look, it's kind of all of our faults. Like, we all did this thing the same way we saw somebody else doing it. And yeah, so it's just like you rather than pinning someone, again, she said it before, she thinned out the poison so much that it really sucks that the rabbits are probably dead and gone. But at least we don't have to, like, look at somebody and go, it's your fault, and create this awful tension. So that is a very interesting way of solving this. Catching my meaning, she nods, despite looking like she's just bitten into a lemon. Even if it was an accident, who could bear the guilt of being solely responsible for the possibility of their deaths? It's a smart conclusion! Erika's so good. Having sensed my intentions, the president and Sister Basquiat nod, their eyes downturned. I let out a short, deep sigh, relieved that this troublesome business is finally over. But then... a whisper echoes through the quiet chapel. Words spoken out of guilt. They pierced the heart of every person there. They were tiny, infant creatures. Logically speaking,
お前は心配性だな。動物もののテレビとかで見たことないのかよ。草食動物は敵に狙われやすいから、生後すぐ独り立ちするんだよ。
oh, you're good.
そうじゃないと野生では生きられないんだ。わかる？
This grin right here. Look at this girl. She knows what she's doing.
おうよ。世話してたんだから知ってたっての。高崎が首っ引きで飼育マニュアル読んでただろ。本好きとしては私も熟読したからな。
そうなんだ。
ああ、生後10日もすれば離乳もするし、それに飼育小屋の近くは草もいっぱい生えてるだろ。今は夏場だから食い物には困らねえよ。案外狭い小屋暮らしよりのびのびやってるかもしれないぜ。
よかった。
The moment someone raises their voice, the heavy mood is dispelled like clouds breaking. The Sasaki sisters look at one another in relief, while the president clasps her hands together and mutters a prayer. Sister Basquiat also seems to be offering up a prayer, her eyes shut. I'd been thinking that my bookworm buddy might have been deeply upset by the baby rabbit's disappearance. They're faint, but I hear the words clearly. Feeling my face flush for some reason, I change the direction of my wheelchair. And my eyes meet those of my amitié partner, who's gazing at me in silence. She's never been able to pick up on social cues. At my words, she averts her gaze and looks up at the martyr on the cross. In the words of the Russian playwright Anton Chekhov, if you say in the first chapter that there is a rifle hanging on the wall, in the second or third chapter, it absolutely must go off. It's a dramatic principle that means you mustn't have any unnecessary or irrelevant elements in your story. I follow after the girl in my wheelchair, quite aware that my actions are basically pointless. But according to Chekhov, if you say in the first chapter that there is a rifle hanging on the wall, in the second or third chapter, it absolutely must go off. That's how it goes. The case of the disappearing bunnies has been resolved, but some mysteries still remain. The issues I was hoping to settle have all been settled, and any misunderstandings cleared up. So this is... I don't really know who or what I'm doing this for. I just know that I want to interrogate the girl who slipped out of the dormitory and is now walking along ahead of me. I want to ask her the whereabouts of the gun. I continue tailing her, making sure to keep my distance. As I'd expected, she makes her way not toward the school, but along a little path leading over to the town. Where does a wise man hide a leaf? In the forest. But heading somewhere out of sight is usually best, of course. As I watch her walking along, I think to myself about why I'm doing this. I'd originally deduced that the rabbit's disappearance stemmed from an error in everyone's part. That was a bluff. It was a conclusion I'd landed on so that everyone might share the pain equally. The real reason, the truth had come to me thanks to a niggling doubt that kept tugging at the corners of my mind. All my suspicions had eventually coalesced into a clear image of what really happened. The reason behind the disappearance of the rabbits. They'd gotten ill because Sister Basquiat did not kidnap them, and why would Rika kidnap them? They got sick. We heard one of them sneeze. Yeah, 1 second here. Right. Working from that basis, I can follow the thread of logic. The motive is still unclear, but it works as a reason for her to hide the rabbits. Yes, her. Who is the culprit behind the rabbits' disappearance? Again, it is Chidori. The image in my head becomes crystal clear. I have to ask her why she did it. I see her cutting down a side path as I'd expected, and I push my chair forward to turn off after her. She's standing by the trunk of some giant tree. Gazing down at its roots, dipped in the rays of the setting sun, her expression looks just as annoyed as ever. But she's not straining her eyes. It looks like she's puzzled and irritated at herself for what she's doing, confused of her own emotions. I call out her name, and her eyes narrow softly like she's meeting an old friend. I make my way toward her, navigating the uneven ground with care. Come to collect the gun! I declare. Standing there next to the tree, Takasaki doesn't respond. She just stares intently at me, as though trying to read my intentions from the look on my face. Inquiring minds want to know.
いなくなった2羽の子ウサギはもう亡くなっているんだろう。
She doesn't seem to want to talk about the incident, assuming it's all finished with. She remains silent as I bring us back to the parts that don't add up to Chekhov's gun.
クラスメイトらへ話した。外に出した干し草に紛れて子ウサギが逃げてしまったってのはデタラメだ。だとすると、いついなくなったかってことがやっぱり気になるよな。正直、いつ消えたかなんて確かなことはわからない。でもな。
One thing had stuck out to me. I stroked my hand over the cover of the book sitting in my lap, illuminated by the light of the westernly sun.
私たちが疑われることとなってから、学院内に何か手がかりになるものはないか探した。そこで、勝ったことはないから、初めはそんなこともあるんだなと思っていたが、とある示唆を得た。
I held up the book to show her. It's the animal care manual she'd constantly had on
ウサ
hand.
ギのくしゃみについてだがな。スナッフルという症状の項目でこうあったよ。パスツレラという細菌による感染症。副鼻腔に感染すればくしゃみを起こし、内耳に感染すれば斜形を起こす。さらに内臓に感染すれば死に至るような病態を示す。
Takasaki shows no sign of emotion as I read out the contents of the book. I place it back down on my knees and let out a quiet, lengthy sigh.
生体なら元気になれば症状が治まることはあるらしいが、老体や子ウサギのような容体ならどうだ。こいつは感染症だ。なあ高崎、お前消失の前日に子ウサギが亡くなっていたのを見つけて埋葬したんだろ。
Oh. My immediate partner maintains her silence even in the face of this charge. It's like she thinks that if she just keeps quiet, everything will resolve itself.
今思えば、くしゃみをしだした親ウサギと子ウサギを離して隔離していたし。
バスキア教諭。バスキア教諭の件はどうなったの？あの人が怪しいという噂もあったじゃない。
I'd figured she'd ask me about that. Actually, I thought she'd bring it up in the chapel when I'd won over our classmates.
さすがに面と向かって担当教諭が怪しいなんて言えなかっただけだろうが。
Of course, I did look into the issue with Sister Basquiat. The result of my investigation?
あまり面白い話じゃないんだがね。
She just likes to bleat like a goat in her room sometimes. I don't know. It's a fun hobby. You should try it.
へえ、どんなつまらない話なのかしら。
After I'd heard about the incident from the twins, I'd immediately gone to verify it with my own eyes. The rooms that the sisters live in seem pretty ancient compared to ours. The lock was old and easy to
切
open.
れた。勝手に入ったの？泥棒みたいに。
She's on her siphon filter, Sam Fisher, Gabe Logan shit.
雑貨屋
Let
に
her
置いてある
cook.
金庫の錠前のようなチャチな作りだったからな。楽勝だったよ。
She's a lockpick now. Okay. My brief obsession with lockpicking paid off. I guess it's good to find a practical use for your hobbies.
部屋の中に踏み入ってすぐ、部屋に招きたがらない理由ってやつが分かったよ。
羊でも飼っていたわけ？
Yes, she was keeping a sheep in her room. Sure. Takasaki must have heard the rumor about the bleeding sound too, but I shake my head and tell her that it was probably just that she was embarrassed.
何が？
What are you? It's pretty personal. I'm about to reveal the big, deep, dark secret about the bleeding that comes from Sister Basquiat's room.
問答無用で踏みにじっているあなたに言われたくないけど、黙っているわ。
Takasaki's expression doesn't change when I tell her how the whole of Sister Basquiat's room is filled with teddy
なん
bears.
ですって？
何度も言わせるのは。
Nah, I think that's adorable. I think it fits her personality perfectly.
それと、羊の鳴き声は。
グローラー。
I'm relieved to hear that she already knows what it is, so I don't have to explain.
なんでか知らないが、熊のくせにこう体を傾けると羊の声で鳴くんだよな。つい落とした時に泣かれたんで肝を冷やしたぜ。
To be honest, it had come as a real shock to me. I had no idea what a growler was. Now that I think about it, I don't recall ever having received a teddy bear.
とにかく
I would give Erika a teddy bear. I think we would all give Erika a teddy bear.
話ってやつだったよ。まあ、私から言わせれば、変わって見える事件も偶然が積み重なってそう見えているだけ。
Yep, that's a pretty wild one.
一つ一つ明かしてみたら、そりゃつまらない。
I just kind of like to think of it as Dahlia's, you know, vocal training. She just bleats sometimes. It's good for the vocal cords. Everybody should do a good bit of bleating every now and again. I give her an opening. Surely now she'll tell me. Takasaki narrows her eyes, not in annoyance, but thanks to the weakness of her sight, and drops her gaze back to the roots of the tree.
スイートピーか。たむけの花だな。花言葉はお前らしいが。
花言葉？
She repeats the words back to me, and I can't help but laugh. Seems like she doesn't know what I'm talking about. My cat-like smile scares small creatures. For a moment, Takasaki's eyes show a timidity more befitting a girl her age, but it's immediately replaced with her usual expressionless look.
あなたの言う通りよ。
そうか。ここに眠っているんだな。
For a moment, I lower my head in silent prayer at the base of the towering tree. I don't believe in God, but perhaps I should show a little flexibility in this case.
で、わけを話してもらえるか。本当にパトリック・ベイトマンに
I
なっ
think
ち
that
ま
would
った
be
わけじゃないだろ
terrible. That's terrible. Why would you suggest that?
何？聞こえないぞ。
白羽さんを悲しませたくなかったからよ。
Oh. You're trying. You're trying. You're trying. I think she finally picked up on, hey, maybe I'm kind of hurting somebody, and this would be like another real big one.
お前。
She's gone and produced an explanation about as far removed from the ones I'd come up with as can be. She's claiming she didn't want to upset Shirahane.
そんなにおかしいかしら。
そりゃ、そうだろう。お前、人のことなんざどうだっていいってやつじゃないかよ。
ええ、そうね。間違ってないわ。で、
In other words, I am human after all.
聖堂の聖書の時間の時、やめちまった高坂真由里を訪ねたことか。
今でも何が悪いかはわからない。どんなに親しくても同級生がいなくなったくらいのことだし。でも
The stoutness suddenly dissolves from her features and her brows furrow.
白羽さんが悲しんだのは事実なのでしょう。だからその上、
あいつが可愛がっていた子ウサギが死んだなんて言えなかったってことか。
I wasn't expecting this. I scratched my head, messing up my already disheveled
自
hair.
分の不手際で病気で死なせたから黙って埋めたとかだったら。
On top of forcing her to apologize before their grave, I'd thought of using this to my own advantage, of getting her to make life at school that much easier for me. But now,
まあ、亡くなったとわかるよりも今のまま
probably better to let them just have that fluffy little vision in their head of them making it out into the wild on their own. And I really admire her not giving into her dark desire to just like, all right, you're now going to give me all your lunch money. Not that I think lunch money is even a thing here, but you get my point. She nods, seemingly having no qualms about keeping up the lie. I tell her that I'll make sure to report the symptoms.
それはもう領館に告げたわ。きちんと対処もしてくれるって。
What needed to be done has been done. Looks like our gun is no longer needed and wasn't really loaded in the first place. As soon as I think about this,
それに、
lost in the shadows of the setting sun, my amitié partner continues the conversation I thought was over.
もう一つのわけよ。 美人が悲しむ姿はあまり見たくない。
Well, I think we can all agree there. Nobody wants to see a pretty girl be sad.
美人って。
初めて見た時は驚いたわ。同世代であんなに綺麗な人。
I think you and everybody else at this school, basically. A faint smile is playing across her lips. I'm completely thrown to hear her express interest in another person's looks. No, in fact, I'm thrown to hear her compliment Shirahane like that.
確かに。
But yeah, she do be looking real good, though. A vision of my bookworm buddy comes to mind. There are others here at the academy who are just as good looking, like Yuzuri Hayatsushiro and Nerin Komikado. But their beauty is different to Shirahane's. Hers is the kind of beauty that makes you ache deep inside, like a precious childhood memory you've always held dear, which is why, although she attracts everyone, they can never let themselves get close enough to touch her or speak to her.
真相をみんなへ話さないのね。
Her words dispel the image of Shirahane from my mind, and I voice my assent.
自分で自分の立場を悪くすることもない。知らぬが仏ってやつだよ。クラスメイトらも知れば、こっちを非難するやつもいるだろうが、自分たちが信号を見逃したせいだって苦しむやつも多いだろうしな。
We may be easily swayed by emotion, but I think people are fundamentally good. We diluted the poison by spreading it between everyone, and that's fine. She's admitting here that she actually thinks people are fundamentally good, despite saying earlier that she didn't agree. My amitié partner turns her gaze from me and stares down once again at the cut sweet pea flowers laying at the foot of the huge tree.
初めてこいつの人間的な部分に触れた気がしたな。
That's how I now feel about the amitié partner who was forced upon me. This strange, blank girl who never can seem to take a hint.
何？
いや、お前も人間だったんだなってさ。
She looks at me disparagingly. I hold out my hand to her.
何？
見てわからないか。片手じゃ握手はできないだろ。
Hey, like, we're both kind of in this together.
そうね。
Aww. Actually shook hands. Our first real sign that, hey, gonna try and understand you a little bit. In the dim afterlight, I can't make out her expression.
二人だけの秘密だ。
Carrying this one to our graves. I say this jokingly as she clasps my hand, but when I see her face, right, of course she's affected by this. I feel a sense of shame as she shakes my hand. I'll never be Shirahane. That was a solid little conclusion to that mystery. Oh, we've got a chapter break here, and then we'll call it.
グリム童話に
There's a story in Grimm's fairy tales called
と呼ばれる
Allerleirwa.
王妃が生き
A dying queen's last request is that her husband never marry unless it is to a woman as beautiful as
再
her.
婚しないでほしいと遺言を残した。王は
The king searches in vain for such a woman until he finally meets a young woman who resembles his late wife and decides to marry
王
her.
妃によく似た娘と会い、再婚相手にと決める。娘は王と
To avoid marrying the king, the woman refuses to wed him unless he fulfills several impossible requests. Hey, I know this story.
そして1000種類の動物
She asks him for a dress as silver as the moon, a dress as golden as the sun, a dress as dazzling as the stars, and a coat made of 1,000 furs.
しかし王は
But the king clears every one of her hurdles and pressures her into marriage. Using her magic dresses, the woman is able to escape difficulty time and again, but
最後は
in the end, she doesn't have time to change into her fur coat. She must become the king's wife.
どれほどいい
No matter how she loathed it or tried to come up with another way out of her situation, her fate proved inescapable.
これから始ま
The
る
story that begins now is that of another poor girl resolved to reverse events that have already transpired. Well, that's an interesting taste of what's to come. All right. And with that, we're gonna call it. So, as always, I'd like to thank you for stopping by. Sure was nice of you. That really ended up being a pretty solid little conclusion to that. I think it's definitely more satisfying than any of the mysteries in the first game were. So, if that's any indication, then I think we're maybe on track for that element of the game and this series to be a bit more improved. So with that out of the way, thanks for stopping by. We'll catch you next time, and I hope you have a nice rest of your whatever.